Welcome to RuralStrong, where we talk real challenges and bold solutions in rural economic development. I'm your host, Joe Barker. Let's get into it. Welcome to RuralStrong. This is your podcast host, Joe Barker, and we're coming to you from the Southwest Tennessee Development District podcast studio in beautiful downtown Jackson, Tennessee. And we have a superstar guest today, a lady who is probably one of the most well-known names in rural economic development circles in the entire nation. And, I was looking at her bio, and probably one of the most talented people that we've had on our podcast. And so I want to say hello today to Becky McCray.
Hello, Joe. I am so happy to be here with you today. That was very kind, a very kind introduction. Thank you so much.
Well, it's the truth. I've been following you for several years, and I've actually been to several conferences where you spoke, and I love talking with people that have passion for our rural communities, and as we say, has been there and done that, and again, I appreciate you taking the time today. So let's get started. For those few out there who might not know who Becky McCray is, give our folks a little bit of your background.
Certainly. I am a lifelong entrepreneur and rancher. I live in northwest Oklahoma here in Woods County. The town I live in is not actually a town, we're just a place, and that's Hopeton, Oklahoma, and it's about 30 people here in this place.
I imagine everybody knows everybody.
I mean, close. You would
or maybe
think,
everybody's related to everybody.
Oh my gosh, they're half Percivals. I swear, it's true. That's my neighbors. So this is actually a place I've been around most all of my life, as my grandparents had built this house that I now live in, and so I've been running around here for a long time. My other background, my professional background, is that I have been a number of, besides entrepreneur and rancher, then there's also, I have been a town administrator for a town of 993 people. I worked in workforce development. In about 2006, my husband and I bought a retail store in the nearby town of Alva, Oklahoma, which is around 4,000 people. And that gave me more time than being a city administrator had given me. So I used a lot of that time to go online, had great broadband there. So in 2006, I started my blog called smallbizsurvival.com. That's focused on small town business only. That was my entire focus. It's still going. I still publish there. And then I also did an online business called Tourism Currents with Sheila Scarborough from Texas, where we focused on social media marketing for tourism in particular, and I was the small town specialist there. And then in 2015, my friend Deb Brown and I started SaveYour.Town, which is where we take both of our passion for rural and small towns, Deb's background as a Chamber of Commerce executive, my business background, and we put all that together, and we are trying to work with small towns who want to do great things for their community, people who see a better future for their town. And we have been doing that since 2015, and we provide things that are online that you can take, like there's free videos and $9 videos. There's our newsletter every week of the world with practical steps you can put into action right away in your town. And we also do a lot of speaking and working at events. We visit communities when they want us, and we help them to take action right away. That's our focus. There's always a way you can take action. Stop waiting. You don't need permission. You don't need all that funding. You don't need perfect conditions. Just start.
Well, you mentioned Alva, Oklahoma. Let me tell you something, Becky. I have actually been to Alva, Oklahoma, and I'm going to quickly tell you the community I grew up in, where I served as mayor, at one time we hosted the NAIA football, national championship. And Northwest Oklahoma State actually came to Hardin County, Tennessee, and played. And I went to their semifinal game, and I never will forget. It was the first Saturday in December a few years ago, and I like froze to death.
He says a few years ago. I know how many years ago that was. I do. But yes, I do recall this whole, like, Alva Northwestern Rangers,
That's
my
exactly
alma mater.
Right.
And in fact, like I am the fourth generation from my family to get a degree from Northwestern. So I have quite a lot of connections with that university. I served on the alumni board, the whole thing. And the year that they won the national championship, I think is the one that you got to go to that semifinal game. The following year, they made a run all the way to the finals and did not win.
That's right.
And a good friend of mine that I met through social media, Jason Falls, who's from, he's been around lots of places over in your corner of the world, but he was sports information director for the other team, and we didn't even know that until we met years later.
Well, it was, I spent, I guess it was 2 days up there, and in fact, another fellow and myself drove out there, and so we got to see a little bit of lovely Alva and over a weekend, and we enjoyed their folks coming down to Tennessee and watching them win the national championship. Okay, let's get on the subject now. Let's talk about what you do with SaveYour.Town and maybe give our listeners a little sense of, number one, what you look at in a community as you are maybe evaluating how you can help them.
Usually when we work with a community, they have reached out to us. They've been subscribing to our newsletter, or they've been searching online. We had a community out of Nevada that reached out to us that they had received some county funding specifically for beautification, and they were looking at how can we not just make our downtown more beautiful or make our entire town more beautiful, but how could we be also using that to be a thriving and prosperous community. So they reached out to us with the subject of beautification, but we talked to them a lot about how they could get more business going in their downtown, especially how they could do better at supporting local businesses and focusing more on how their community could support the people who wanted to start businesses. So it may be something like beautification, but it's also often about their downtown. Or Shawnee, Oklahoma reached out to us because they were working on filling the empty buildings in their downtown. So we start with what they want, as opposed to here's a list of 27 things that your community doesn't have, because all of our communities have been through that process of some kind of needs assessment where someone tells you what you're doing wrong. And I don't feel like that's the most helpful way for me to work with a community or my colleague Deb either. We want to know what you're excited about. And one thing that I've noticed is a theme for you, especially on your podcast, Joe, is that you talk about how your town really needs to have a plan. And what I've learned is a lot of towns have plans. In fact, they have multiple plans. They've got so many plans on the shelf that they just don't have the money to implement.
Need to have extra bookcases.
You need more bookcases. I'm going to steal that line. Oh my gosh, what a great line. So there's a lot of planning that's been done, and a lot of it forced from the outside because you're applying for this particular grant or you are working as a part of this program through your state. They say, where's your plan? So you have to have the plan. So lots of communities have those plans. What they don't have is things that reflect what they want themselves for their communities. And I find that everybody in the community has things that they have, hopes and dreams, things they want to see happen in their town. So we spend a lot of time talking to them about what they want. And we put that together and go, oh, well, in talking to all of the people that we've talked to, we found 3 separate people who were really wishing there were more bike and hiking trails. But y'all don't know each other. So we need to introduce some people that have the same dreams, but maybe haven't told enough other people to find the other people in the community who want the same things so that they can build their enthusiasm together. So we do a lot of building connections. That's part of our idea-friendly method. And then we're encouraging people to take small steps. So that's the beginning point is, what do you want for your community? And then how can we make that happen easier without waiting?
And I'm glad you talked about grants. This is sometimes I get on my soapbox, but, I tell people that I've worked with communities here in West Tennessee, and we'll get maybe on the average 3 to 5 inches of snow in a typical year. And I've told people I've got some communities, if they found a grant for snowmobiles, that they would apply for it just to say that they received a grant. And you're exactly right. I mean, you've got to determine, the community needs to determine what they want and need, and then match the financing with it.
Sure, absolutely. I was in Estill County in Kentucky, and Joe Crawford, who was economic development there, said, he sat down before I came and he reviewed a bunch of the plans that they had on the shelf and said, wow, we actually accomplished almost everything in these plans. We just weren't referring to them day by day because we were doing the things that mattered. And then when I visited, he said, he called together kind of his core group of people and said, we're going to come up with ideas that maybe go into that next plan. And I said, what I want to ask, the question I want to ask is, since you're pulling together the people who are really great at making things happen, what are the challenges that are so big that only this group could address them? Like, ooh, that just changed everything about what we're going to do today. So instead of discussing, what do you want to see in the next plan, we said, what are the challenges that are so big only we in this group who really know how to make things happen, we're the only ones who could help the community take them on. And we had a really great conversation about what they wanted, and housing turned out to be just about the first thing they mentioned. I know you're not surprised by that. None of us are. And so we talked through how many amazing resources they all knew of. They put together the pieces and they came out of there with action, right? Like they were sending texts and calling people right away going, here's a specific project we can take action on. Let's get started on it.
And Becky, it is like putting the pieces of a puzzle together, and I want to get your thoughts on what I think is a very important piece, if not the most important piece, and that's local leadership. How do you view local leadership playing into the success of a smaller community?
There's leadership, there's official leaders, there's official elected officials. There's all these different ways that we look at who are the leaders in the community. But the people who have official titles or positions, whether you were elected or appointed, I feel like play the best role when we are finding out what people are excited about. And then we're helping them do small tests and building connections for them, because this is what I know about local leaders. They have great connections. They know people at the state. They know people that are doing programs. They're aware of a lot more resources. So while the city or the county or the organization that you're part of, like the Chamber of Commerce or the Economic Development Group, you may not have a lot of money to throw at something, but you have your resource connections. So finding out the ideas that people have. If they tell you that's bike and hiking trails, then you know where they can find those resources from the state and from other programs. Help them connect to those. Help them do tiny tests to say, can you start with a bike ride across this one section and find out how many people are interested? So helping them take those small steps and experiment their way forward and to draw on your own connections. That is where you become, it's like you're investing in their ideas, but you're not necessarily investing money.
Well, and I find out, Becky, that small victories lead to much larger victories, and I agree with you. It doesn't matter how small it appears that the victory might be, you should celebrate it. Would you agree with that?
I do. I say that you should have a ribbon cutting for every little stage of the process. So like when you're doing a big drainage project, I don't care if you cut a ribbon over the new culvert installation. I was in Idaho, and I think it was Deary, Idaho, and they were talking about that they were doing a drainage project. It was going to lead to making their new ballpark usable. Well, the drainage ditch and culvert aren't going to be the last stage. But he said, the mayor said to me, like, we can mow the grass that's there and we can have a community softball game and celebrate the fact that we've gotten this far. So every stage of the process, even something as mundane as a culvert, you can celebrate. The biggest wins don't come from the biggest plans. They come from an accumulation of small steps. And it's those tiny tests, going back to the bicycle example, if you don't want the first step to be to sit down and write the comprehensive plan for all the trails. You want the first step to be, let's get on our bikes and find out how many people we can pull together with this. That's how you're going to find the momentum to make something larger happen in the future.
Absolutely. Well, Becky, I know you have different publications. You're an author. And let's talk a little bit about one of your books, Small Town Rules. Tell me a little bit about that book.
Oh, gosh. That one is from 2013, and I co-authored that with Barry Moltz out of Chicago. And we were looking at what lessons small town businesses had for businesses everywhere. And this was just as near the beginning of social media marketing being taken seriously. So there's a lot of social media lessons in there, but there's some basic business lessons that we know in small towns that sometimes I think city folks forget about, like you need to plan for zero. Like if you have been involved in any kind of agriculture, you know there will be years with zero income, and you have to plan for that. I'm not sure every business takes that same approach. But those of us that are around this ag economy, we know plan for zero, have multiple lines of income, and spend your brain power before your dollars. These basic financial rules that we have learned from our small town upbringing apply to every business everywhere.
And what do you find, Becky, would you say is the single biggest or maybe the most common challenge that you find in rural communities?
We actually run a survey of rural challenges just to ask people what they see are their challenges. There's so many outside experts who tell rural communities what their challenges are that I wanted to ask people what they thought their challenges were. And interestingly, we've been doing it since 2015. Over 2,000 rural people have told us their own challenges from their own point of view. The fastest growing challenge has been, or I will say one of the fastest growing challenges and the most underappreciated, is the lack of childcare. Because that prevents so many good things from happening in your community. People cannot hold a job if they cannot find childcare. People cannot start a business if they have no way to take care of their children. So lack of childcare holds back a lot of development, and people are not recognizing that for the barrier that it really is. But the other thing that has been a consistent challenge since day one of that survey is that no matter what our own challenges are, the biggest thing holding all of us back is negativity. And people who are not open to new ideas, and people who squash ideas and say, we tried that once. That has been a bigger challenge than any of the solid infrastructure challenges, than any of the other economic challenges that we face. We can't address any of those until we actually start to be more open to new ideas.
You know, I find, Becky, that in most small towns, there's been some really good projects that have been killed at the coffee shop more than any other place.
Killed at the coffee shop.
That's right. I mean, we all have one, the place where the people gather every morning to drink coffee and to talk about this community where they live. And I used to tell people when I was an elected official that there were more projects killed at that coffee shop than I could ever hope to kill myself.
That is absolutely a real thing. there's been so many kind of derisive ways that we talk about folks that are negative. Like we talk about the committee of negativity, or we talk about the citizens against virtually everything and call them the cave people. And I think that it misses something that is not necessarily a negative motivation, but people will try to help you not fail, sometimes from the best of intent. And they're trying to help you not fail by sharing their previous experience. We tried that once is sometimes a story about, hey, here's what caused us trouble in the past and we want you to avoid it, even if that trouble was 20, 40 years ago and lots of things have changed. Or they'll say, that'll never work here, because they're thinking about the barriers and obstacles without knowing what kind of innovative ideas you might be bringing to the table. So while sometimes it is spiteful, sometimes it's not, and yet it sounds about the same when people say that about your ideas. And that is how great ideas get killed at the coffee shop, rather than us being open to new ideas. Our number one way to overcome that, to be more open to new ideas, is to take small steps, to try and test things at an incredibly small scale. The risk of spending, I don't even know how much money, on a new economic development plan calling for entrepreneurship support and entrepreneurship ecosystem building, asset mapping, and entire approach, that takes a lot of money and a lot of time before we ever find out whether those strategies are going to work for us. Whereas if we start with an entrepreneurship pop-up fair or a youth entrepreneurship class over the summer that is actually about them running their own businesses, then we're going to learn a lot more quickly what's working in our community. So we want to get away from killing ideas at the coffee shop and into the habit of being more open to new ideas and testing them out at really small scale.
Let me ask you this, Becky. When you're looking for new ideas and from your citizens, what's the best way to gather these ideas? Do you like for a community to do surveys, have public meetings, town hall type meetings? What's the best way to get this input?
You know, we've always done it through that kind of survey and town hall, and you come to us with your idea kind of thing. And I really feel like the way to find out what the promising ideas are is to be out and present in the community and listening. And so asking people, what are your dreams? What are you trying? What are you working on? Instead of saying, here's our committee list, tell us where you're willing to serve, we can go to people and say, hey, what have you been working on lately? What do you wish we could do in this town? How are you going to do that? So actually listening when you hear about something, when you go down and you see some guys playing basketball at the playground, stop and talk to them. So the other thing that I hear that elected officials do sometimes is be present at the same place over and over in a reliable way, such as always be at the local cafe on Thursday morning, and anyone can come talk to me there. But still, that's not as good as going to the people. I was speaking at the Arkansas Municipal League, and a local official from a town of like 500 people said, you know, we are trying to get people to come to town hall and share with us what their dreams are. He said, we even went out to the churches, and we were there at the church and said, come to the town hall meeting that we're going to do. And I was like, you know what? You were just about there. You were at the church where they were already in community, where there were already groups doing things. And instead of saying, I'd like to listen to what you're doing, you said, come to a whole separate place at town hall, maybe not the most positive location in the world. A lot of negativity has happened at town hall before. So instead of asking them to come to a separate location, go where people are in the community, whether that is an informal group like the Kayak Club, or that's a formal group like a church, or it's an organization, or it's just people that you meet. I was with a Chamber of Commerce director, and we were walking down an alleyway. There was a woman smoking a cigarette behind a bar, and the Chamber of Commerce director said, so, hi, introduced herself, said, you know, what kind of things interest you in the town? What are you involved in? What are you working on? And listened to this woman's input. And I don't think we take that seriously enough as an important task as local leaders to listen to what people are interested in and already doing and ways that we can help them.
Well, and if we go to places where people are comfortable, then I think that's where we get our best ideals.
I mean, certainly it's more comfortable to share an idea where you sit in your church, where you go in fellowship, and to share the things that your youth group is working on, than it is to go to the city hall building where, people have come to complain for generations, and maybe, we have a lot of tense city council meetings there. Like, the city council chambers are normally not the friendliest place in the world, but we do a lot of things where we say, this is public input. Come and give us your thoughts in the most unfriendly location that we possess.
I know you're an entrepreneur, and one of the challenges, but one of the opportunities that small communities have is to grow their own jobs. And what advice would you give communities on how they begin that process of small town entrepreneurship?
More small spaces. People need smaller places to try out their business ideas. So that could be retail spaces that are smaller where, some place that somebody could put just like maybe a table worth of merchandise to try out whether that works in their town. Or it could be like a small maker space. Like, there's a lot of people with garage-sized business ideas, but no garage. So if you can make, if you've got that giant industrial building sitting empty, can you divide out like some 10 by 10 spaces or 20 by 20 spaces where people can do really small ideas? We call these the innovative rural business models. And then and that's about making things available where people can do tiny, temporary, together businesses, traveling businesses, and to take better advantage of technology. And that's how you'll start more small businesses in your town. We actually have a thing called 101 Ways to Make More Tiny Businesses Happen in Your Community. And related to that, specifically about jobs creation, because economic developers are judged so many times just on the number of jobs. I have to say, no one creates jobs in a vacuum. It's always done in connection and collaboration with other people. And the rural jobs creation strategies are all about connecting entrepreneurs to each other so they can support each other and connecting them to the resources they need to learn whatever the pieces are that they are missing for their business. So that could look as simple as a group of business owners that have a text message group where they share ideas with each other instead of feeling like they're isolated and on their own. So there's two pieces: the innovative rural business models about tiny and temporary and together, and the rural jobs creation strategies about connecting people to people and people to resources.
And those jobs, Becky, that are created from local people in their own communities, those jobs tend to stay there. Would you agree?
That's where most of your jobs come from. If you sit down at the end of the year and you count the number of jobs that you've got this year that you didn't have last year, where did most of them come from? It was individual businesses and entrepreneurs in your community hiring one person, hiring a couple of people. That adds up really quickly. Those jobs stay. It's a lot more resilient. If one firm leaves or goes out of business or somebody, closes their business, you don't lose all your jobs. So I'm a big believer that that's where the bulk of your effort should go, into the place that pays you back the best. Big ribbon cuttings and large business announcements get the headlines, but your community is built on the basis of one job at a time.
Absolutely. Well, in just the couple of minutes we've got left, Becky, I want to get your thoughts on technology today. Of course, we all talk about AI. How can small communities take advantage of the advances in technology that we see today?
When I started in social media, I used to get this reaction from people who were from bigger cities. They'd say, how can you be so good at social media from such a small town? And I was always like, we have internet and everything.
And you have color TV, right?
I mean, we get sunshine 3 days a week. I mean, we're really uptown. So I think that we get a bad rap in small towns that people think we don't take advantage of technology, when really, when you look around, there's a lot of really high-tech folks in your small towns. So I think the best way to take advantage of technology is to look at what you're doing in your business right now and say, how could I delegate this to the technology? That might be something like a simple automation. Can you set up a simple automation that will handle a particular interaction for your customers where they reach out to you? You can instantly reply. You can help them with their problems. Or is it something more complicated, like creating, using AI as a partner on big projects? One that comes up a lot, I think, is that grant applications are not nearly as scary. If you sit down and you take previous plans, annual reports, budgets, whatever documents you already have that relate to that, you take the grant application, you feed all of that into a tool like Notebook LM or into your favorite chat style GPT, and you can create a first draft of that grant application so much more quickly than you could do sitting down and pouring through all of that individually. So the main message is don't be scared of it. Do experiment with it and look for ways that you can say, how could I delegate this to the technology?
You know, we've talked about several subjects today. What I'd like to do, Becky, in the future is let's take a subject and let's do a podcast on a subject and really be able to drill down in depth on that subject. But I want you to know what a treat it's been for me to have this visit with you, and for our listeners that want to get more information from you, your wisdom, your experience. How's the best way for them to get in touch with you?
Joe, thank you so much for that very kind invitation to come back and go more in depth on all these. Because, I agree that we covered a lot of ground. I'm thinking through all the things we just talked about. We covered a lot. The one thing that I want to mention is that I have just published my new book. It's called The Idea Friendly Guide, and it's more about this idea friendly method that we've talked about. It's available as an ebook. It's available in print, and there's a large print version. And that is available wherever you like to buy books, or you can find it at SaveYour.Town. That's our website address, SaveYour.Town. And you'll find also my colleague Deb Brown has a book that is about From Possibilities to Reality. It's like a recipe book for your community. It's full of these beautiful pictures and stories, and you go, ooh, I want to try that one. So that's the books. We have our website, SaveYour.Town. I'm available at LinkedIn, Becky McCray. There's 2 C's in McCray. And I would love to hear from folks. What's going on in your community? What challenges and assets do you have? And what do you wish other people knew? So that's what I would love to hear, is reach out to us at SaveYour.Town.
Okay, folks, I encourage you to reach out to Becky. She's a wealth of knowledge and you can tell has a passion for rural economic development. Becky McCray, thank you for being on Rural Strong.
Thank you so much for the invitation.
Thanks for joining us on Rural Strong. If you found this helpful, share it and follow the show for more insights from rural leaders making a real difference. Until next time, stay rural strong.